Did I control that up there?
If I remember that, I said,
Your WhatsApp on
We also
No, have you finished?
what an American says
No one can give it to me.
on lady.
Yes, that
The same words mean something in English. It's like, because we think we're talking the same, but we're not quite. And then culturally, how we respond as well. When Americans say this, they want you to challenge whereas if you just put it like that, I'm like, that's what you think. No, it's like, as if, yes. This is it's not even a discussion.
okay. I saw this spoon inside. I thought,
Oh yeah, tonight. No, so that's the problem.
I mean,
He'll be
to
driving
me,
the
Trump
van
is an
be
example
like tipping on his side and not
of the
spilling.
worst.
Okay, everyone, do you want to just grab a drink and get ready for the afternoon? That's about to be starting in a few minutes.
well, siesta still happens.
It is part of the
It is siesta. Siesta time.
When will you think you get
It's good to keep
Well, we have to be
back ahead?
This is what I built.
What?
So you might have been saying things nice to your wife.
Oh, I like that. Glory, glory, glory. Feel free to keep eating, enjoying your coffees. Ahue. Erbi? Platicalo na Erbi? No speak Erbi? Ahue coffee. So, I want to, as we get started, I want to say, again, and echo, by the way, everybody's done a fabulous job, Pastor
Yeah.
Claire, you really did a great job. And because we haven't really had a lot of time to be able to prepare in advance, we had a meeting yesterday, and on that meeting, I mean, the fact that you were, it's,
Just it was we're asking for clarification.
okay, yeah, we can bring it back to you later. Okay. All right. So we didn't have a lot of time to prepare because of the fact that, from the whole transition with Bradford and all of those different things. But yesterday we met, and the results of a short time together, I'm always so impressed with. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's amazing what has been achieved. And I don't know if you got any sleep last night, Pastor Claire, or not, but I know that you must have worked really hard to bring all that together just from yesterday. So well done. And Becky did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
Becky did that. I just can't imagine it being said any better, honestly. I really can't. It was just phenomenal. I want to say thank you to Simone for the amazing gifts, and especially in the hotel for us, but then also all around. I'm telling you, you're one of the best, like, seriously, you're one of the best, like, host gifts group. I think, there was a little competition between the Tapasoas and you, but I think that now that they're out of the picture, you definitely, you're definitely the model to strive for. Okay. Is it because I don't have it on properly, or? Oh, it was muted. That helps, isn't it? I turned the switch, but didn't do this. Yeah.
It's definitely here,
Definitely louder. I want to say thanks to our Brazilian team and friends for serving us so well. I'm telling you, you make us better because you're here.
Come on.
So thank you so much. We really do value your supply of grace, and we love our Brazilian family, and it's an honor to have you with us and to be a part of this. And I want to encourage you that you make sure that you don't hold back from sharing your voice and enabling us to be better because of that. Let me see here. Oh, I've just got a couple notes I didn't want to forget. One was, I think it would be fun, and it's important for us, and this is one of the things, my action from last session, is I'm picking up the banner to champion how do we bridge that distance, because I'm more mindful of it than maybe others, and how do we bridge that distance with our friends from Lebanon or wherever as we grow as churches. And so what I would like to encourage you to do while you're here, it's kind of a little bit of a mini action assignment through this weekend, is if you can send them into our WhatsApp group little greetings and little comments and different things like that to kind of keep them engaged, and then they can push that out into the team as they need to. I think that would be kind of fun to do that. And with that, I'm also mindful of our family, even if they don't have a title as pastor in the way they used to, the Tapasoas. I think we should do the same thing with them. I think we need to make sure that as people are around the world, family is still family no matter where they move to. And let's be mindful of that and try and keep them engaged as much as we possibly can. And then as I start this session, I need to, because we're starting a little bit late, when do I need to finish? Is it 30 minutes now?
No, you've got until 3:30.
Okay, 3:30. That's great. That's plenty of time.
But you can keep going if you want.
Yeah, that's plenty. My wife's like, you're like, you can keep going you want. And Julie's like, it's an hour. Like, you got it. That's enough. Please don't go any further. So, I want to start by just thinking about two things from a leadership lesson perspective, and then we're going to go into the actual content for this session, which is called what do we see? And it's not what does Matt Beamer see, it's what do we see?
Yeah.
And I obviously, because of the time constraints, I am going to make proposals of things that I think we could see together. But even the last session, the session with Pastor Claire, that was more about a submission for response and for feedback. It's not like, here's the way it is. That this is a process, as she said rightfully, this is a process we're committing ourselves to over the space of this year to clarify what is it that Go Church is. How do we operate? How do we function? All those things. And like, for example, Becky's session is one of those sessions that we kind of, like, the Bible says, in the multitude of counselors, let every purpose be established. And it was yesterday that we were talking about a lot of the things that have to do with Go Church. It solves the question if we look through that lens of family. But then your session was perfectly pitched in the sense that we also realized, because Pastor Allen says, he's like, well, wait a second, I didn't come from a family that functions the way I want our Go Church family. And I'm like, wow, that's important to know. And so that informed this idea of that when new people come into the family, we need to ask the question about what was your family experience so that we can then help coach them in maybe, like, for example, in a session like that was just done in the future, have it recorded, have it done, with some visuals and stuff, maybe with different people, and it's intentionally a resource to people coming in. They're like, this is something off the menu that you need to watch, because the way we think of family is probably not the way you think of family because of your history, which we're aware of now because you completed that 250-word little essay on describe your family life. And so, I'm expecting a lot of those kind of cool things to come out that make us this really unique thing as we go through this process. And we want everybody to have input to help shape that as we go through. There's people that are not here that will be here in the future. And so, okay, let's go back a year ago from now. Back to 2022 March. And the posts were coming, and they were like, had to rearrange personal commitments, made it a priority to be here, and kind of were in and out because of kids, and it's like had to travel up and do these different things. But it was about coming and kind of, what is this about? It was exploring the kind of getting to know, a little bit of a date. A little bit of a date. And then same with you guys. You guys came in as well, and visit a little bit. And those relationships have developed both through things like Zoom, and then also through we got together in June, I think it was, this last year for a in-person thing, and just a little time together, a meal or something, and then we met over there and talked a little bit, and then also, of course, in November, for those that were able to make that. And that's where Jerry Melanie Stone came for the first time, again, kind of observing, getting to know, again, a little bit of a date kind of an idea. Kenny's here in this kind of context for the first time. Kenny's a longtime friend, a longtime part of the family, but he's in this venue for the first time because we want he and Jen and the family to be much more involved in this whole aspect of things. So there's other people, just like Kenny, just like the Post, just like you guys. I mean, there's other people like that who next year, like the Stones, like next year, they're going to be here. Yeah. And I love the emphasis of culture because you can't like administrate processes as much as you can create a culture. And when people come into the culture, it's just like, okay, it takes a little while, but once they're like, okay, why do you use the word family? Why are you emphasizing family, not network, for example? The language of our language is we don't use network or organization because they paint different kinds of ideas, but family paints the idea that we want to develop. And then that has a modeling and a replication just through the way we interact with each other. And because of sessions like that last session, which was brilliant, and the things that we talked about, the things we want to give space for and emphasize, we create this environment that at a certain point in time, we won't even have to do it on purpose. It will just self-replicate itself. This is who we are. This is what we do. We have to be very intentional about as we expand and grow to ensure that we're growing in the right way. But at some point, this is just who we are, and as new people come in, they're like, okay, I'm either going to have to be like that, or I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And so that's the cool thing about it is if we get it right at the beginning, it will just make things easy as we go. Okay, so from a leadership perspective, there's a couple points I want to make, a couple examples. One is the importance of building and how we build, and the process of building. So think about this. I have an architecture background, and we've been involved in different building projects here and things like that. But think about you have an empty space of land and you want to build something. If you go to that space of land and you start digging up the dirt and you start putting in the foundation, and then you basically leave it there, and a year later you go to a whole different vacant parcel of land, and you attempt to try to build without there to be go to the next phase. How successful of a building process will that be? You're not going to build anything of worth. You're not going to get anywhere. So in church, there's a building that takes place, and one of the leadership lessons that's really important that we sometimes struggle with is sometimes there's a temptation to try to do new things. But actually building, if it's built well, takes time and repetition and going over and over and over again. And so, and it's about the same thing and adding a layer to it. It's about the same thing and adding another layer to it. It's about building upon something, which means you have to remember where you've been. And if we're only meeting together 2 or 3 times a year, that means there needs to be this process of bringing what has been done into the day, and then we add to it, and then we bring that in, that with the addition to the next place. Another example would be farming. It'd be very, very ineffective for a farmer to go and plant seed and then ignore it. And then go to another field and water the ground where there's no seed.
Yep.
And we know, the scriptures tell us, there's one that sows, there's one that waters, that God is the one that gives the increase. And so, from a leadership perspective, we should get tired of hearing ourselves say the same thing over and over and over again. That should happen on a local level within your church, and it should also happen within the family. If we're saying the same thing over and over again, we're building, slowly building. As new people come in, they will not have heard things, and they need to hear things to be brought into the same place as everyone, and then you build from there. And we then can look for efficient ways to bring new people in by doing things through media and e-learning things and giving people access to stuff that they can download quickly and become very familiar as quickly as possible. Okay, so that's just kind of some thoughts about the way I think and the way I think we as a family need to think and be repetitious and not be afraid of repetition. Therefore, what do you think I'm going to do next? I think we'll repeat some things because it takes time. I think, Julie, you were just saying, was it 20 or 30 times to hear something, just like to hear it with no visuals or no nothing, but like with play, 3 things. And I'm not very good at the play side, so I probably have to repeat things 20 or 30 times before people can actually absorb it. I'll try to be better at connecting with people and learn how to play. So, Leaders Advance from last year, we talked about the family focus, and it really emphasized at that time, I want us to remember, this is the first time after a couple of years of not meeting last year in 2022. And COVID had happened, and in COVID, it became easy to become isolated and inward thinking. Yeah. And in my heart, it seemed like that we had our heads down, and my desire of that was, it just seemed like the Lord was like, look up, that it's not the us four and no more. Let's look up, let's look out, let's prepare for people to come and for growth. And that was kind of the idea behind emphasizing the church as the plural part, not just 4 churches, no more. And with it, the same thing was like overly emphasized is not just churches, but churches who plant other churches. Mm-hmm. And then the idea of, in order to do that effectively, we have to do it from a place of healthy strength, generational growth as a family of churches that plant churches. This is something that we shared in November, and it was the idea that was spoken out. It was for when Pastor Joel Sims was with us in Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey, and he said some things by the Spirit of God, and it's the idea of, in order for us to go to where God wants us to go to, we have to let go. And the booster rockets are good because the booster rockets are representative of those things that brought us to where we're at now. But there is, in order for us to go into that season that God wants us to go to, even sometimes the good things need to be let go of. And it was a challenge to all of us as what is that good thing that brought us to this place that we need to let go of in order to go to the next place. And I gave the example of Julie and I, after the Lord spoke that, there was in my mind, I felt like it was that we need to transition the church in Beirut to the Hadabas who will already begin to prepare to pass the baton to someone who graduates from Rhema in the future there, a Lebanese person. So on April 9th, this Easter Sunday, is going to be our 1-year anniversary of Go Church Beirut and our transition Sunday. 1 year transitioning to them. Now, it was partly an intent from the beginning, and I told them about 6 months into the church, I'm like, that's my goal to do that. And you can wreck it, you can disqualify yourself from that, but that's the aim that we're trying to move towards, and they've done a fabulous job, and it's going to be an excellent time there. So we talked about, as we expand, it's important to make sure that we also don't minimize the strengthening of the existing churches. And around our table earlier in discussion, it was a really valid and very healthy and very good observation is what, it's one thing to look to expand, but if we're not healthy and strong ourselves, so how do we make sure that we're healthy and strong ourselves in every way we possibly can and allow that to be that which replicates? We don't want to expand at the expense of the strength of the existing churches. Expansion is not, church planting is not the aim. The aim is to have generational, long-term influence of churches. That's what really changes things. We've talked in the past many times, what is the number one hindrance of church growth? It's leadership. And 2 keys to developing leaders and strengthening our churches is 1, culture. I mentioned that earlier. If we have a culture that is all about leadership development, so what does a culture mean? The words we say, the things we do, how we act. In most countries, in Brazil, there's things if I do, like little things with my hands, if I do, it's really rude, that is not rude in the United Kingdom. There's things, as we all know, that if someone does in the UK, it means nothing to an American, but it's really rude here. And, why is that? It's a gesture, but my point is what we model speaks the things. And so we can talk till we're blue in the face about the fact that we are a disciple-making, leadership development family, but if we're not actually living that because we are doers and we do everything ourselves and all of that, then we're modeling something that goes against what we're trying to build as a culture. But if we have a culture that is it's just everything that's done in the culture is about raising up. Your comment about Brazil is a good example. Is as soon as they get a few people, their culture is hey, we don't have to have every dot dotted and every T crossed. That's a starting seed for a church. And in their culture of expansion and growth and ministry, that works really well for them, and they know how to make that work. So once the culture's in place, it will make it easier. It will be that foundation from which to replicate over and over again. And so the second thing is from a leadership development is internships or some kind of, so we've got that culture of leadership development internally, but then we have this external access, external pipeline that comes from the outside. And family focus, for last year we began to talk about this in November. What are these things that we want to develop? Culture, we want to clarify, we want to connect, and then we added this leadership thing to it. And so these are like, from a priority standpoint, these are the things that we want to be working on as a family of churches. And as Pastor Claire rightfully said, it's going to take us some time to do that and do it well, and we'll constantly be working on it, but to really establish things, the focus is to develop that culture, to clarify who we are as a church. What is a Go Church and the Go Church family, and what is a Go Church family church, but not branded as Go Church? And these are the questions that originated where we are today, and then the aspects of leadership development. How do we do that? That led to this working document that is still a work in progress, but has moved forward significantly. It was mentioned about, we asked Jerry Melanie Stone to assess and to present to us on the ARC launch process. And it was mentioned earlier about the 5 phases, and that led us to look at a presentation last November about the 7 phases of things. The milestones aspect of this process, these are some of the milestones. Like the first thing we said is, let's look at the question of what we think would be good church planning milestones. What is DCPI doing? What's ARC doing? What are these things? And let's try to boil this down. There's still an action that is necessary here where, someone like Pastors Alan and Claire, maybe Melanie Stone, who suggested she'd be available last November for something like this, meet together and begin to boil some of this down even further and really work on that process where we get to this place and we then begin to develop that. Then there's actions on each one of these. How do we move from one place to the other? And not only the definition of it, but then the actual action of it. Like a register of interest, there needs to be a little website portal with a little mini application. That has to be developed by somebody. And that's an action. And so out of this time together, and as we meet in these different times, one of the things we want to do in between is we want to have like a follow-up document that is like, okay, regarding from connecting to planting, here's the actions that need to take place. And then when we come and we meet by Zoom, someone who's the champion of that particular one, Pastor Claire Allen are one of the champions for that particular one, then presents, here's the progress we've made since last time. Here's the steps that we are going to take over this next period of time until we meet again. And so it's that kind of guidance of a document that's leading us through this like project management process to bring these things to bear. Otherwise, what happens is there are good ideas at a time like this. We talk about things and then they just don't move forward. I'm so impressed with the limited capacity that we have time-wise and people all over the place, working jobs, all the stuff that we do, how much has transpired with everything that's happened. The Bradford transition, the earthquake, and all the different things like that, but yet still, we're moving forward in significant ways. And my hope is that we would be even a little bit more intentional now that some of the dust is settling on some of these things and we can engage more people. We can actually be even more intentional and accomplish even more as we work our way through this year. We mentioned resources. I want to make sure for those of you that didn't know, Grow Churches with Jerry Melanie, that's a great resource that we can use. And the point with this is why create something new when there's already resources that exist? And especially with Jerry Melanie having been in the number 25 church, Ark Church plant, and having been a part of setting in place the process of a lot of the documentation for the first website that Ark had. There's a great resource in this group here to be able to help move us to that next place. And then Quest was another example. And we've seen that really develop and move forward in an amazing way. By the way, you guys are from Ohio. These guys are in Ohio too, and it'd be good for you to connect with them at some point. We looked from an internship, and if you remember, Matt Hadawala talked about the Loop and the EMENA training tool that we use. We talked about internship and the mission leadership experience, or what we're going to be releasing in the new format called Go Beyond. Go beyond yourself. So we talked about Go Church Away Day. So basically that brings us up to one of the final things that we did, and we said, let's dream together. Let's describe Go Church family in 2030, 7 years from now. What does it look like? We spent some time talking about that. So that was recap. Now this is to where we are today. And I want to start by that big picture, 2030, 2035. What do we see together right now? And I just want to open it up right now and just ask for the feedback. You don't have to raise your hand or anything, just kind of blurt it out. What are we seeing now compared to what we saw before?
I have a question about because I love vision setting and all of that. And would we want to set a number of goals, because they say if you set goals, set a measurable one. So would we want to say like in 2030, this is how many churches we hope to have, like set numerical goals?
Yeah.
Or is that a little bit too much to do? I mean, because like I have a goal in my number in my mind for how many people I want saved through our church this year. Like I have a number.
Yes.
A measurable goal. Whether we hit it or not, it's like you're more likely to if you put a number to it. Is that something we should do with that, or is that a little bit out there?
Yeah. I mean, what does everybody think? I have opinions or thoughts on that. What do other people think about that?
Well, we set at the 15-year mark, before we'd even planted the first church, we set that we would plant 10 churches in 15 years. And depending on exactly how you count it, either we've planted 4, London, Bradford, Liverpool, Beirut,
Yeah.
or the people that we've enabled and planted have gone beyond, and including Gleason Marina have planted X number,
Yeah.
and we're way over the 10.
Yeah.
You know, actually, part of it was us setting our faith to that,
Very good.
which is why we're in this room.
Yeah.
So I think this is not just a good idea, I think it's critical that you actually, even if we come up with a figure, it's before the Lord we're holding these things,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Very good. I love it. I love it. Any other thoughts on that? What about measurable goals, and not just number of churches, but other thoughts on it, for or against, and other ways?
I think it's really good because when you run a race, you have the finish line, don't you?
Yes.
You set your eyes on that finish line. So when you sprint, they teach you to keep your head up.
Yeah.
Run. Don't look down if you trip.
Don't.
Whatever.
I love it.
But like, so I think goals are really good. So you keep running. So yeah, I think it's a good thing.
Very good. I like that. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Any other thoughts on what we see? So the question is, you know, what we can begin to answer that is, how many churches do we see? What kind of church do we see? That kind of aspect of things. Yes. And then what other ways maybe do we need to, you know, value measurement? Or what other things do you see that have nothing to do with measurement?
So I think there's a need to look at seeing the infrastructure behind everything supporting it, both in terms of personnel, but also in terms of whether that's systems, whether that's processes. You know, so there's no one specific thing I'm thinking of, but generically from across all of the pieces. So kind of linking off the connection to planting document, but the whole thing that supports that and goes alongside that, and then alongside that you've got the relational aspect where, okay, so we're sat here today, 100 churches, 10 churches, 50 churches, however many churches will give X number of people, but then you've got all the other people who are connecting in both from a interest level stage, perhaps further down the road stage, and also those who are in as a support capacity as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's all that aspect to look at.
Absolutely. The systems, the support structures to facilitate the future. You know, it's one thing to have goals and measurable goals, but if you don't have, then work backwards to put the things in place to achieve those things, then it's just hope.
What strong churches? So what makes a church strong? You don't just want 10 weak churches. What about
Yes.
10 strong churches? And then how do you say this is a strong church?
Yeah, how do you measure the strength of a church? What do we value as strength? Very good.
Yeah, I was going to say almost alongside each SMART goal, a measurable goal, you have to have an immeasurable quality. So maybe you might not be able to say exactly what, I don't know, a discipleship measurable goal is, but if you have 10 salvations, alongside that, you've got to have the bit that you can't measure of their character development and
Yeah.
so it's.
Yeah, very good. Like the intangibles and the hard to measure sort of things are some of like love. Yeah, how do we measure that?
Or like you followed up with those 10 people, and they didn't just get saved, you pursued them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
You have to say the buy, don't you? You have to say the buy. So when you talk about discipleship, X number of people discipled by going through getting a grip in the basis or whatever, so you can do the
Yes,
method. You have to
you're
have
talking
the-
about like this person has went through this aspect of our steps to growth,
Yeah,
our growth
otherwise
path.
you can't measure it, can you,
Yeah,
if you don't know
and
what
at this point, we had this number of people that got born again or visited church, then this number of people went through step 1, this 2, 3, 3. Yeah, yes, that's very good. Excellent. So, for sake of time, I just wanted to begin I feel like that this year we see a lot easier than maybe we saw a year ago. I feel like we see more easily. Like a year ago, I don't feel like I could say some of the things I'm going to say right now as far as numbers and you know, dreaming together. I felt like last year we're just coming out of COVID, we had our heads down, and it was like, let's break free from this a little bit. And it was such a powerful time together. We had a great, great time. But what's transpired in this year, I feel like, has built capacity for us to dream bigger. And, you know, for us, one of the phrases that has been echoing in our heart is no small dreams in 2023. And yesterday where we were meeting, you know, Pastor Claire was talking about this, you know, people are saying things about Go Church around the world. They're saying good things. They're speaking well of Go Church around the world. And she's like, it's opening her heart to, like, there's no small dreams. I mean, we could have Go Churches all over the world. And that, a year ago, I don't feel like we were in that place. Not just Pastor Claire. I don't think as a family we were in that place. And a number of us were just barely connecting or, you know, like I said, dating a little bit. But now I feel like that there's some strength and some weight and some capacity to us to be able to, and I'm thinking, man, where are we going to be a year from now? I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just so happy and so pleased with the way I see things developing. So we're a family of churches, and I always put in that bracket, a family of churches, planting churches, working together to reach the world. I'm not changing the vision, but I'm just saying I really want to emphasize churches planting churches. And I think that's important to the way we think as we move forward, because the kind of church you plant needs to have that within the DNA. And that picture of, you know, that the eggs, you know, I like that is incredible, just how cool that is. Now we have this phrase that we're using, talking about immediate family. And so my question is do you think we can grow from 4 churches of what I would say is questionable strength? We're not in the strength place that we feel like we should be and can be and need to be. Do we feel like we can, that means we need to grow stronger, each church, wherever we're at? And I include Beirut in that as well, even though Beirut's got some numbers, it has some things where it has some weaknesses, and we need to improve and strengthen those areas. Can we do to see 11 strong, healthy, vibrant, growing churches by 2030? So that's 7 years from now and 7 extra churches. 7 years and 7 churches. I think that might be easy. It might be hard. I don't know. So I'm just throwing something out there for us to think about. Us being stronger and 7 churches in 7 years. And this is, I'm talking about immediate family now. I'm not talking about the wider family, so churches that would be a part of our family but have different corporate identity. I'm talking about Go Church churches at first, and we'll talk about the other. So, and then these 7 churches already begin to think about planting a church each by 2033. That's 10 years from now. But as long as we can only do it from strength. So 7 churches in 7 years, and then those churches turn around and in the next 3 years plant churches themselves. Churches planting churches. So that would be 22 churches in 10 years, talking about Go Church family, immediate family. Never mind the wider family, which is really a really important part. I think the wider family aspect is going to make us better than if it would be if we were just only like a denomination. I think it's going to make us healthier and better. So, as an example, right now there's 4 churches. Generation 1 church, using the kind of the egg side of things. Gen 1, that give birth to 2 churches. And then so there's that one church that then gives birth to another church. And then there's a Generation 2 church that gives birth to another church, etc. And that just keeps kind of going on and on. And so this is going to get crazy here. But I wanted to do it to show you how crazy it can happen so quick. So, all 4 churches plant a church, at least one church, in the next 7 years. That seems super doable to me.
Yes, it does.
And from a place of strength.
Yeah.
Then, the next generation, Generation 3, that same first church, for example, let's say Beirut, plants another church in the subsequent 3 years. And the new church that's been planted by 2030 in the same 3 years plants another church. And look at how quickly the numbers grow. And the idea being is we don't want to grow fast, we want to grow well, and we want to grow from strength. But I'm just trying to show that now, if we add the family, the churches that would be also adopted in. This is just church planting. Now think about that. That's just 4 churches planting 2 churches, and one of those generations planting 1 church. That's all that is. But then there will be some churches that want to be adopted in. They're out there on their own, and they're like, we want to be a go church, and they're willing to go through a transition like the Bradford did from World Harvest Bible Church, and like Manchester did from World Harvest Bible Church, and they're willing to go through a transition from whatever church name there is to a go church because they want that access to that family. And so let's say we had just 3 of those in the first 7 years. And then because we're churches planting churches and they buy into this DNA and culture, they know that in the next 3 years, they come into it, hey, we're churches planting churches. We don't just plant a church and just not plant other churches. That's not who we are. We're churches planting churches. So they start another church. So in that first 7 years, 8 churches, 3 additional, and 11. Then we have, let's say we have 3 additional adopted in that 20. I mean, see how crazy this gets? What if we average 150 people? That's not undoable in today's society with social media and all those things. You know, we could have 25 churches by 2033 really easily, and influencing more than 3,000, maybe 4,000, maybe 5,000 people on a regular weekly basis. And that doesn't even include the go to the world church online, which I think we need to do. Because I don't think there's any other way we're going to influence the number of people we need to influence without it.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to make us stronger together. So, another little summary here, and you'll get these PowerPoints, access to them, so I won't go through this, but this is just the numbers in a little different way. But I haven't even talked about friends yet. Friend churches. So my thought is what about by 2040, 17 years from now, could we have 40 or 50 go church, immediate family churches? And what if we had at least half that number of wider family and at least half that number of friends? That's 100 churches. So how important is it that we do something like this? Well, the population of the United Kingdom by 2040 is said to be somewhere around 70 million. And just 1% of that, 704,000 people. That's a lot of people. And even 100 churches isn't going to make a huge dent in that, even if let's say we grow to an average of 200 people per church. That's only 20,000 people at 100 churches. So that's where I'm like, we really need to have something online that can reach hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah, that's good.
It needs to be something that's like an online congregation that really strengthens and builds, so that this idea, like what you mentioned, Pastor Claire, about Brazil, that if we find out through analytics that there's a group in a house and there's a community that people have friends and they're building, they've got 20 people meeting in their house, and they're like, and then we start a church plant there. And so that online component is super important, I think, to this kind of aspect of growth. That was 2022. Then already by November, what are we going to be like this time next year? How many people are we going to be involved? Do you believe it's possible? This is a yes or no question.
Yes.
Yes. Come on.
Are you willing to give your supply? This is a yes or no question as well. There's no, well, I don't know, maybe, if it's convenient. There's only one answer to this. It's either
Yes.
we need to have I'm hoping I'm painting the picture of the fact that the necessity of us doing our part, everyone's. What does that mean? It means we also need to think different about how we build as we build together. We cannot build a hierarchical kind of a way forward where somebody is over something and they do all the work. We have to build a care you one for, and this is wisdom for church growth anyways. Build care you one for another, share you one for another, submit one to another. All those one another scriptures, having that both locally means you can grow exponentially if the pastors themselves are not the only ones doing the care, but there's a culture of care that's built throughout the whole family in a local church or in the family of churches, then that should mean, just like Acts chapter 4, there was no needy person among them. There was no lack amongst them because they had all things common. All people are responsible for all people in the family. Now, not everybody has to provide all the care for the family. So this paints the picture as we move forward is our terminology in our organizational structure cannot be traditional terminology. UK directors, global directors, pastor, it has to be different. It has to fit. And this is the point we're making is the lens through which we see every question has to be that lens of family. So like when we're painting, what are the responsibilities? Let's say, for example, we're talking about UK family, ... whatever we call that position. Those people are not the people that tell every congregation what to do. Those people are more facilitators to facilitate the caring for another. They're not the provision of the care. They're the facilitating of the care. So they need to ensure the systems are in place, the communication takes place so people know where to get that. And when they see somebody that is in the gaps, they then match point A to point B, connect the dots, not to provide the care, but facilitate and make sure that everything's taken care of. In the same way, the early apostolic church, the apostles were not the ones to meet the need of the gap that formed in the growth of the neglected widows and the daily distribution of food. But they actually were like, look you out among you, people who can meet this need. People of certain qualities can meet this need. So the provision for the needing of the need was in the family, not in the apostolic leaders. They were to coordinate or facilitate that. Finding a term, first, that means if we're going to do a different kind of church family, or, we're not a denomination, we're not an organization, we're not a network. If we're going to do something different, then we have to use different terminologies, and it will be awkward, it will feel funny, but it will define who we are, and it will actually be that thing that actually sets culture in place where people who are new are like, why are you that? Why do you use that term? Let me tell you why. So the question is, what must be in place to see this level of fruit and impact? What are the booster rockets that need to be let go of so that we can make room for this space? This will not happen with everybody being senior pastors of churches and giving what remains capacity to this. We have to have people in place whose main responsibility is, in fact, involved in leading and coordinating and facilitating the aspects of the family that we need to on a global level, a family level. So one of the things, I was going to ask this question and ask for feedback, and I will just briefly, just for sake of time. I can't spend as much time as I wanted to, but what must be in place to see this level of fruit and impact? What do you guys think? What are some of the things that we need to do that we're not doing? Everything that Mark said. What he said. Yeah, so definitely those systems aren't in place. Sure. What else?
Money.
What? Money, finances, resources. Yeah, sure. Anything else?
I will say that in some things I've observed by watching other organizations is that they do have a clear team that these churches can go to that are kind of leading like the movement.
Yeah, we need some clarity of roles and responsibilities and who to go to and for certain situations. Sure. Yeah, the clarity of those things. Very good.
Even clarifying like new church growth, like okay, if we're starting a church, what do we need? Doing church training in other places, I was kind of amazed at how clear like when we just sat through some sessions and it was the number of people were defined that you need to start and all of this, which sounded kind of harsh to me because I've always been in environments where you just go with the flow and just go with the spirit, but actually there was a lot of success attached to having really clear standards for if you want to start strong, this is what you need. And I kind of recoiled at that because I also think you can just start, right? But then they had a lot of research behind starting strong and how your initial impact that you make in the community is what stays. And instead of having to start low and work your way up. So if you start with this many people, if you start with these things already in place, then it already gives you a leg up in success in the future of your ministry.
And it costs less and it goes faster.
Yeah, it goes a lot faster. If we're really looking at effectiveness, it just makes it more effective. It's a little bit hard, a lot more work up front, but the guidelines are just super specified.
Yeah.
And so making those things, what that looks like for us, a little bit more clear.
Yeah.
It might look different for us and others, but still be more specific as
Very
to
specific.
what our
Yeah, that's very good. And another point, research fact-based. Not we think this is a good idea, but having things that really back up. Very good. Good points. Anyone else? What must be in place for us to see that kind of level of fruit and impact?
Well, I think we need to have the right people in place to be able to facilitate what we're talking about.
People in the right place.
So people to connect with the wider family, the friends, and also all of the different churches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It speaks to the team side of it a little bit too. The people, the team, clarity of the team, who's doing what, that kind of side of things. Absolutely, which is a great segue to this, is we need to firm up the family leadership. And I'm going to use family over and over again because remember, if we're not careful, we're going to gravitate towards something outside of where we want to go and what we want to do. So let's look through the family lens as we define family leadership. And so yeah, I'll just kind of show this point. This is a proposal. This is what we're doing. I'm putting stuff out for us to think about, and then we need to come to a conclusion as we get feedback and response. But I was looking at, what are the terminologies? I'm very uncomfortable with the idea of a global director, global pastor, anything like that. I don't feel that that's the role I'm supposed to play here. I feel like we're supposed to come alongside and help to facilitate. By facilitator is someone who makes progress easier, someone who helps, a helper, a supporter. That's the way I see it, as opposed to someone who's an overseer, someone who comes alongside and supports. And that can be a little bit hard for people to get their head around. Is who's in charge? It's we're a family of churches. So let's then back up in that uncomfortable feeling that we have, and let's back up and ask the family side of it. Now, please understand this, and that every analogy breaks down at some point. And this is going to break down right from the start. Right from the very beginning, it's going to break down. And that is, Julie and I, as parents, we have our son Jonathan and Michelle, daughter in love, and now they are out into their own home. And so there's things that even though I was the one and she was the one that told him to wipe his nose and to shut the door and to turn off the light and to make his bed, all those things all his life, I don't have that right to say in his life anymore. He can do whatever he wants. And he can not make his bed for the rest of his life. And I even have less say in communicating anything like that to his wife. So Julie and I, we have this way of thinking that we have to tell each other this all the time. Our parenting sort of adult children side of things is we celebrate, and we have no opinions. We celebrate, and we have no opinions. The reason we mention celebrate 3 times is we want to overemphasize that sometimes you have to look for the things to celebrate, but we celebrate, and we have no opinions. But we are proactively always available for them. And we make sure they know constantly, we are available for you. If we see, even if they don't need to ask, we see something, say, can I help? Is there some way I can help with that? We make ourselves proactively available. But we have no opinions, and we celebrate. And in some respects, the leadership that we need to have within the family of churches needs to have that kind of lens, and we need to have that kind of expectation towards them within so the pastors are the pastors of the church. Matt and Julie Hannibal, I'm no longer the pastor of that church as of April 9th. The whole team knows it. April 9th, there will be a change, and I have no right to speak into that church. So there will be things, I know from experience, because we transition a lot of times, there will be things I don't agree with that they do. And I'll have no opinion about it. I can't give my opinion about it, but I don't have the right to give an opinion to it. And if I give an opinion, it's not going to help anyway. It's only going to break that relationship and push things away. So what I can tell them is I celebrate, this was great, this was great, this was great. I celebrate, and then, hey, if you guys ever need me, I'm available. You know, if you ever want to meet, I'm available. 24 hours a day. Never think you're going to bother me. If you ever have a question, I'm available. And I'm telling you guys think that's easy. If you've not experienced that as a parent, that is one of the hardest things to do as a parent. And it's hard as a pastor who's transitioned out of a church, especially if you still have that relationship with people. It's super hard. But the reality is that's where the real growth comes as a pastor is to be able to, you know, like talk about adult children. It's taking those steps, and it's sometimes failing, but failing forward. And if someone does fail, you're still there as a parent to come, let's dust you off. You're okay. You can do this. It's not terminal. You can stand back up. We can keep going. And so the family lens actually defines a lot about the way we think about leadership, the way I want us to think, and I think we should think about leadership structure moving forward. So we need a terminology that fits that. Facilitator, coordinator, something like that. And so I'm asking you to give your input to help. What would you call? Let's say, for example, Pastor Alan and Claire step up into a role. I'm using them because they're the most obvious ones. So step up into that role of UK family ... We're not going to answer it right now. But what should that be called with that lens in mind? Now, I'm going to say there's a proviso here is within the UK immediate family of churches, there is this piece of anything that's under the statutory, legal, governance side, and with the charity involved, there's responsibilities for budget and finance and reporting to the board and all those different things, that there has to be some control elements in that. And this is the hard balancing line. Like, for example, again, using the family example, my daughter, Elizabeth, still lives in the place where we call our U.S. office in the U.S., but it's a house, and she lives there, she pays rent, but she's on our insurance. And so the other day, she wrecked her car, and she's like, she's like filing a police report and all this stuff, and I'm like, look, you don't pay for the insurance, that's gonna make my premiums go up. You've got money in the bank that you have because you live at discounted rent, go pay for that thing to be fixed so you don't make all of our premiums go up. So there was an element of discussion and control about that back and forth, that because she lives in the house and she's underneath my insurance policy for an automotive, then, which saves her money, she pays, but she pays less. She does pay, right? I don't know. She probably pays less than I think she pays. But
You set up guidelines. If she goes to school and works, and
we take care of more if she's going while she's going to Rama and she works, and there's agreements.
that they meet,
Yes.
and it's less.
Which is a good point. So having the clarity of this is what an immediate family means, that person enters into that role knowing, okay, there's going to be some benefits of the shared things, but there's also going to be some a loss of, I'll say it in a positive way, there will be increased accountability in important areas that are statutory or legal, that a person wouldn't have if they're on their own. And that means that there's a board in place like there would be any other place, but there's a board in place, and then there's leadership in place that needs to help coach people through to a place of successfully meeting those. So for me, I'm presenting this to you, for Julie and I, the comfort level of where I feel we are at is like family facilitators from a global level. And then notice, it's hard for you to see there intentionally, but there's future family facilitators. What about Europe? What about, you guys talk about India? What about this? What about that? What about Africa? There might be future family facilitators that actually help. And there might be some people that don't have a geographical connection that are family facilitators. Like coming alongside people that experience, and I'm not trying to put anybody in any jobs, but I'm using real life potential examples so that it helps us ground these ideas. Jerry and Melanie Stone, they have all this experience. There could be one of the couples that helped to go through the interview process And so they could be a family facilitator without portfolio, as it were, to use a British kind of MP politician type of an expression here, is they're a part of the leadership team that actually helps to interview and coach and help people through a process, but they don't have a geographical thing. And then the reason I use this image, and I want you to imagine it flat, not up and down, but flat, is that I want us to see that there's a collaborative aspect of things. That we can collaborate with the different churches, we can collaborate with the different facilitators, we can work together towards the end aims, according to clearly defined roles and responsibilities that we will need to shape. So, just provide me some initial feedback or thoughts about that concept. I thought you were praising the Lord.
Oh, I just want to assume to talk first.
No, I was just gonna say, like, my mum was like fantastic at that thing. She never once told us how to do anything, what we should do, where we should go. She never told us what to do with our kids. She never looked disapprovingly if we did anything. And because of that, it made me, for everything, go, Mum, I want to ask you.
Yes.
Because I didn't feel like I was being told.
Yes.
And so I think it helps so much to be more open for suggestions and advice and wisdom if you're the asker rather than
Yes.
put on.
Yeah.
If that,
100%.
so I support
Yeah.
it.
Not being told what to do, but available to come to and ask for counsel.
Which brings up a point, is that I have two very different children, and some child wants more, like Jonathan doesn't need it, he doesn't want our help, but Elizabeth is more needing help. So would different churches have
Different kind of help.
Yeah, different
Jonathan
kind of
contacts me constantly to ask me questions.
Maybe it's-
So
yeah,
I'm just saying it's different, and that's a good point. Some might go to one person, some might go to another person, but if we all carry a responsibility of caring for each other, now there's responsibilities, and we're honoring of each other in our relationship and our responsibilities, but we should be able to go to the person who will meet that need the best that you need at the time. Elizabeth doesn't come to me if she needs caring. She comes to me if she has need for counsel.
That's true.
Even though I care for her more than you do.
Do we need to add to that list non-competitive?
No, competition is healthy. No, that's good.
I think, sorry, do you want to go? I was just going to say, I think it's absolutely fantastic, but I think to build on something Pastor Allen said earlier, different family experiences, and also the different ways people are used to working, whether it be from a business model or from a previous life experience, may make some of this hard or easier. Yeah. Sort of building on what Pastor Judy just said about two different children, to adapt to this kind of mindset of working, way of working, but also to kind of feel comfortable within it. So I think we'll have to provide the grace stroke, support stroke, whatever's needed. I don't know what the word is, but
for sure, yeah.
to help people adapt to it, because I think that's
great example of that might be someone comes in. This is a great point. Great example. Someone comes in and they say, for example, I was just at the Go Church, global weekend with directors out in Clare, as an example. They might miss it. That shouldn't bother us if we internally know that the facilitator is really, I'm using this as an example. Yeah, but we should expect that there's going to be a learning curve because it's different for a majority of people, overwhelming majority of people.
I just comment on that I think that's a good thing as well, that they present the whole idea of being a family presents a big problem, or potentially a big problem, to people who don't understand what family is.
Yes.
So if they come in and say we're a family, and then you start thinking what family is,
Yes.
and so you start behaving. But once you get into culture, you start realising, no, this is how I'm supposed to do it. That can really impact the way the church actually manifests in the natural.
Yes.
So if they have to start thinking about what family is, and start being challenged on that, yes, there could well be a lot of baggage,
Yeah.
but only in a good sense.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to comment on is to say that when you said facilitator, I thought, what? No, I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
That's my initial thing. When you went into it and explained it, I can't really think of a better word.
Yeah.
On top of that, though, I loved what you said about that. Brilliant the way you described it. I'm not that yet. I'm not that parent yet whose kids have left.
Yeah.
So, so I'm at that stage where I do everything for them. So there is a transition. But I love the fact, the way you describe that just seems so healthy, seems so great. And like Becky said, you would, Dad, are you going to tell me what to do? Or like, what do I need help. And you come to that person because you've got that relationship.
Yeah.
And it's built on the foundation of your strength of relationship with your kids.
Yeah.
That they will come to you, they want to come to you, Becky, with your mum.
Yeah.
So that goes back to relationship.
Mhm.
We need to have that relationship with the family of churches.
Yes.
Have that relationship so they know who to go to and they will be free.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great. I was hoping that some of that would come through, and like I'm exactly with you with the idea of the facilitator. That just feels like. But then when I looked at every other word. I'm like, the definite, like coordinator doesn't work. The definition of it, someone who
You
makes
can't
progress
call that
easier,
or like
pretty
that.
good.
Please don't.
Julia.
My only thought is, and I appreciate so much the fact that you guys would all, of the people who are at the head of this organization would not want to give themselves titles that would be too much. But at the same time, the whole reason for a title is just clarity on people's roles. And my thought would be that you would want the title to just give clarity, because if it is this, which I think is it's a great definition of what your role is, but at the same time, it will require further clarification to every single person
Yeah.
you repeat it to. So could we do traditional titles but then with the culture, within the culture, know that this is what that means. It means facilitator, where it's just clear to people who's this, like, have terms that are a little bit more clear, but then we can just treat it differently, where it's not like, I'm not treating this like I'm in charge, but it's just,
So,
you have to explain it every time.
okay, so what might be a title that'd be more, feel more
Well,
comfortable?
like you're the founding director, or you're the founding pastor. I mean, I guess you don't say president of the organization or whatever, I'm not sure. But something just more like universally understood.
Yeah.
Director, founder.
If you come up with something that feels like it's traditional and fits better, but here's a negative to it. When you create something, a new culture, you sometimes have to learn a new language.
Mm-hmm.
And
So are we doing this for us or for the people who are coming in?
it's both. It's culture. It's creating culture and creating a language for our culture that fits us. Meaning that any person comes in, if they have, like, let's say we use pastor, overseer, or founding, whatever, that might be.
I was just thinking that.
I'm joking, Bishop.
Bishop Beamer has a ring, so
It has a ring, all right.
yeah. My seal, kiss the ring. Yeah. So
Well, maybe you just come up with a definition for facilitator.
that's actually where I was going with the point. Any term you use, because it's a language, you have to actually define the term. And if there's a better term, I'm really, really open to it. I really am. But what happens if you use traditional terms is people already have mindsets of what that means. So what you're doing by using a different kind of term is you're forcing people to think about it in a way that they wouldn't otherwise.
Because, okay, I just come from previous ministry experience where the title was changed because someone had abused the title in the past. And so there was a hot thing to use that title. So we were given a different title. But every single time we had to explain our role because people didn't understand the alternative title. And we were making a reaction because someone had misused it.
Yeah.
But instead of just using the title for what it was, and we had to carefully walk on eggshells around that title for so long that it was like, after us, because we did it healthily, then they just gave the next person the title. And then it was just, we were just like, we had to, for all these years, explain, every time we said our title, explain what it is.
So that's different though, and I'll tell you why it's different, because I know your experience is the culture was this way and your title was this way.
Yeah.
And so your title was not in alignment with the culture. And so that was like, that's weird, we don't understand how that works. But if the title is actually in alignment with the title's in alignment with the culture and facilitates that and supports it, then I think it probably works. But that is a very, very good observation.
Could you do like a transitional thing? Like I'm thinking of like how just pictorially companies change their logos. They keep the same thing and then they drop a little bit and then they drop a little bit more, and then 50 years later, it's completely different because it's. So could you do like global directors, global family facilitators, and almost double barrel for a little while it's getting set, and then
I mean,
I don't know if that would be enough of this is our culture.
I would say if you're doing organizational change, that approach is really, really important. So for example, the Apple logo looking like this, and now it looks like this, and it went through a process of things. Or Nike logo having the word Nike, and now it doesn't have Nike. You know, so that happens over organizational change. But if we're trying to start something, having the language in place actually creates the understanding. And the point is, all your points are great and valid, and I'm really happy we're having this kind of discussion about it. And I'm not settled on this. I'm presenting it, so it's still an open question. But I want you to think about it, and I want you to pray into it.
Yes.
But as long as when we look at it, like that's why I have the word family in there. To me, that's really important. The family part is really, really important. And what is that person's role and responsibility? Are they overseers? Are they pastors of pastors? Are they directing this thing? Are they coordinating this thing? Or are they someone that is trying to make progress easier by helping and supporting? And so any title we use will have to define the role and responsibilities clearly, no matter what the title is. So we could call it just something we make up, you know, but we'll have to define it. Great discussion.
Just by quick research in a short few minutes, typical name for something you're describing, you know, facilitate, that makes sense to me, but founder is more of the term used through other organizations.
Yeah, but I'm not the global founder. I'm not the founder. That's not the role. It wouldn't align with the responsibilities that I would carry. We're co-founders.
Right.
So, you know, and actually we're all co-founders in some ways for the family side of it. You know, we really all are. And so let's move on from that just for the sake of, we've got a couple other things I really want to touch base on, because this is one thing, is having firming up leadership, which has to do with responsibilities, names, but through that important lens of how do we see that. And we want to make sure that we don't lose the local expression of the leadership while also allowing for that unified approach which provides value, especially within the immediate family in the ways we can. So the other thing is I've just put again, a lot of this terminology is terminology I'm trying to carry something through as a proposal. So you know, another thing we need to do is have a priority for our family meetings. And we need to have some kind of terminology. I'm not saying this is the right terminology, but I'm going to present a terminology to us. The Spring Summit, and the purpose of that would be the global family focus, like we're talking about focus, and then facilitate immediate, wider family and friends leadership development. So there would be, the reason I'm thinking is in the word summit, the idea is you're up on the mountain and you're seeing out into the future. Some of the stuff we're doing right now is that vision, is that focus, is establishing that side of things. And if that's the purpose, great. I'm just presenting this. It's subject to be changed and tweaked. And then we'll talk about it as we go through the year. And there needs to be a target if that's the purpose. The purpose and the target need to be aligned. So immediate and wider family pastors, leaders, and prospective leaders. So who's the target of that spring, whatever we call it? And I just use spring because it helps define it. Family camp. What is the purpose of a family camp? It might start with a family weekend, but the aim is we've all talked about, it'd be great to have an actual family camp, a week camp. Purpose, facilitate relationships, fun, generational ministry as the Holy Spirit leads, but in alignment with the family focus. I think that would be kind of a part of it. And the target, all immediate family and friend, immediate wider family and friends. It's open. An autumn advance, maybe that's where we do more facilitate, and I use the word facilitate, that kind of a thing, and I did that picking up on the fact that one of the responsibilities for a UK facilitator, global facilitator is to help facilitate these things in ways that a person, you know, they wouldn't be the doers of it again, they're facilitating the accomplishments of it. They're facilitating this by coordinating and facilitating the aspects. They're helping to progress those things. So, That one I see is maybe the immediate family pastors and core leaders with some wider family pastors invited. That's more of what I'm thinking about in advance, where we go away, we spend time together. There's a different kind of approach towards that than maybe this. So this is an example.
Is that more family business?
Yes, family business. Family business, yes. And the idea is we have clearly defined purpose, clearly defined target for who it is aimed at, and that defines how things move forward. And then we have, I'm calling them, it doesn't have to be called this, but I'm just like, what's the difference for our Zooms? What are they? Who should be attending? These are the Sundays 4 times a year, at least right now. The purpose, facilitate implementation of strategic planning. So you've got the autumn where you're talking those things through, and then you're following up with the, you touch point in these different things, but then there's the Zooms that help to move things forward. And then outside of those, that would be where progress is reported and what next steps are. And so we all kind of are communicated to who needs to be a part of that. Well, it's the team. Scheduling in advance. I don't have time to go through that. Survey, evaluating, survey, combining the reporting aspects. So these are different things. We've got the schedule, we've got the firming up of leadership, we've got core family meetings and how we work together as a team. Then reporting is a really, really important piece. And let's see, quarterly reports. Then we have this, we've begun to do this annual global family report that needs to be, completed and finished. There's these quarters. It's a jot form. There's a couple, examples of it beginning to be put together. There's analytics that come as a result of it. And I want to make sure that we realize that, let's see here.
It's really easy.
What?
We made it easy.
Yeah, I was trying to, there's a page I thought it would go to, which accounts required, there's the results of it, is where I got that other point. Anyways, there's a whole results thing. Oh, I know, it's actually in the thing, but you have to look at the, I don't know. So anyway, moving that reporting forward, and then reporting on the things, I love the idea of the report, because then we can how many people got born again in this church, this is a church, and as a family, we report annually that this many people got born again, this many people connected in these different ways, etc. So,
I think it's important to talk about evaluation, how important it is. We've been learning about in Quest, if you don't have something to evaluate everything that they've said, there's no use in doing something unless there's an evaluation. Evaluation shows what you've done and completed and helps you to continue growing.
yeah, absolutely. And if you don't measure it, you can't evaluate it.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a document that is linked to this that we can push out to everybody. Pastor Allen and Claire can do that as the champions of trying to move these points forward a little bit more. And what we do in between these meetings is really important, but I just wanted to show this image here that I want us to think of a little bit of a cyclical nature of this, so that as we get down to here, grow strong, the idea of growing strong is so that we can plant another church and new people connect, and then a church plant comes out of that. That's me finished, having gone over the time. Thank you for your patience. What's next? Barney.
Break.
Let's take a break.
Suddenly realised I couldn't read what was on the board. Wonderful, thank you. We have chargers.
have a charger for my computer.
Oh, that'd be great.
Is it working now?
Both the lightning.
Hers is smaller.
No, it might work, actually.
Oh, no, that's the USB-C.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see if I've got my.
Yeah, I've got some
Did you finish it yet? I haven't started.
We have it right next door.
No, nobody does power.
So we can get the.
Yeah, everybody does power.
I don't normally do that.
I say, I've actually got. No, I've USB-C.
He's given a very I get a very vague message asking if I'll do one. And I'm like, I don't know, what do I do? What's expected? Do I have to go through
Are you
the
next, or is
asking everybody?
Julie?
Lightning.
Yeah.
Have you finished?
Yes. Thank you.
Just to make room on the table.
Yeah, it's the one for this.
Yeah, of course, yeah, whatever, yeah. I was jumping ahead.
How do I disconnect?
Little mama might.
Could I,
Thanks, Sal.
Oh, hang on, it's still doing it. I'll put it.
So, Julie now. Julie now. Cool. Sorry about that. I blame Kenny for distracting.
You know what?
perfect, thank you.
I don't even
I'm not taking
do
anything.
anything, so don't blame me.
Distraction.
Is he
Accusing you or pointing it out?
It's like, do you need it? No, I don't need it. Mine, I'm fully charged. Yeah.
Is this yours, love?
I literally have no access to any graphics, so I'm probably not. Puppets. This is a church with no money. This is evangelism. What do you do?
Whole bag?
There's your bag. Not that it matters.
So you doing this session? No, I'm doing the next one, doing the last one. I thought it was me, but I've jumped ahead.
That's the thing, it's something we end up on the different That's why I jumped with the bishop. Kiss the ring. But what the reality is, for people coming in, actually, is less